Well, it's day 3 since the midterm elections were held, and the overall picture has begun to look a little clearer. As I was mentioning earlier, the Republicans up to about 7 votes or 7 House seats short of the majority, and some of the races getting closer to being called. But where do things currently stand overall in both the House and the Senate? Well, here to give us a little bit more information is Brent Keilen, Vice President of FRC Action. Brent, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you, Tony. Good to be with you. And if I could real quick, given it's Veterans Day, just want to say thank you for your service. It's much appreciated.
Oh, I see a picture somebody threw up there. Yeah, that was about 40 years ago. I looked a little younger back then, huh? Actually, I had less hair back then than I do now, though, but that's a different story. All right, well, let's jump into this because last night here in Southern California, actually at our dinner, we had 2 candidates. One current member of Congress, Michelle Steele, her race is yet to be called. It's actually, she's got a pretty good spread on it. She's very confident she's going to win that race, but it hasn't been called yet. She's in California District 45, and then we had Scott Bowell in California 47. That race is neck and neck. So a lot of these still outstanding. But give us the latest on the trends we're seeing.
So, Tony, we still have a couple races to be called in the United States Senate. So we're still at that 49 Republican seats, 48 Democrat seats. In Alaska, we don't know who the Republican will be, but we know it'll be one of the 2. Now, they're 2 very different kinds of Republicans, but we know that that seat will stay in a Republican control there. And then we know Georgia has gone to a runoff. So that'll be December 6th. If you are in Georgia, that early voting starts next week. In fact, so not a lot of time between the general election and the runoff there. Very, very important in Georgia. And then we have Nevada and Arizona still not called. Nevada, we have the Republican candidate Adam Laxalt is up with 90% of the vote in, but he's up by just 1 point. So very, very close margin there. And then we have the Arizona Senate race, incumbent Democrat Mark Kelly is still up by about 5 or 6 points, but there's about 80% of the vote in there. So some folks looking at the numbers are saying it's going to be hard for Blake Masters to pull that out, but some people are also saying there's still a chance given where those ballots might be coming from. So that's the Senate right now. We continue to watch those updates and watch those votes come in, and then Tony, like you said, the House, we're at 211 Republican seats. 218 is the magic number there for the majority, and then we're at 196 called for the Democrats. So seems like by the hour we continue to have more of these races called, but given how close these margins look like they will be, a lot still hangs in the balance there for sure.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of counting these votes. As I was talking with actually we had several candidates. We had 2 congressional, and we had several school boards and some local candidates, and they're all waiting for the votes to be tabulated. So, and they say it's moving at a snail's pace. So I'm sure we'll get more information over the weekend, be able to talk more about that on Monday. But let's switch gears a little bit. What are some of the big picture takeaways from this week as your team in action have been able to dig a little deeper into the numbers?
Tony, there are a couple big ones that really pop out to me right now. One of the ones that I don't think is getting talked about as much is just how significant, even if the Republicans only take the majority by a very slim margin in the House, how significant that is for the Senate filibuster. We've talked a lot about how big that is, and if that filibuster is removed, we would have some very, very concerning legislation, such as the Equality Act or the For the People Act or all sorts of things passed. But because that 60 vote threshold is still in place, that's not happened. The Democrats were very clear. If they could pick up 2 seats in the Senate, that would give them enough votes to get rid of the filibuster and subsequently pass this legislation. But the fact is, regardless of how the Senate goes now, if the Republicans win the House, that probably takes that off the table because they wouldn't be able to get that legislation through the House in the first place. So it's kind of a moot point. So that's in my book, that's absolutely huge. That's a very, very positive development and outcome based off of the results that we're looking at right now. Tony, the other thing that has really been interesting to me is to drill down on some of these school board results. We've watched this trend over the past couple years. This has become such a huge, important issue. We've seen so many parents, so many citizens getting involved. But this was the first national election since this has become this big of an issue. And we saw at the local school board level specifically some very encouraging results carry through Tuesday. And there's a number of really neat stories that I'm just going to mention here real quick. Many people may be familiar with Ron DeSantis endorsing some school board candidates in Florida. All 6 of the ones he endorsed for the runoff Tuesday won. That means that 24 out of the 30 candidates he endorsed won in Florida. In Minnesota, conservative activists won 49 races in 15 out of 19 school boards. That's huge. Ballotpedia is a source that keeps track of some of this info. They tracked 237 school board winners who took a position on one of these important social issues. And of those winners, 55% of them took the conservative position on at least one of these important cultural social issues, such as, critical race theory or protecting female sports or these sorts of things. 43% of them took a liberal position on at least one of these positions. So 55 to 43 may not sound like a lot, but Tony, if you have a 55% majority on a school board, you can do a lot of good with that. You have the controlling majority there. Just a couple other really neat stories. 1776 PAC gets endorsed or involved in a lot of school board races. All of their candidates won in Brandywine, Michigan, and flipped that board to school control. And then Moms for Liberty, it looks like 61% of the 67 candidates that they endorsed in Florida will win.